And so again, I want to welcome you to Avoiding PowerPoint Poison. And my name is Garen Hess. I'm one of the founders of Rapid Intake. And at Rapid Intake, we create award-winning e-learning authoring software for creating desktop and mobile-based courses. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Rapid Intake today. I just wanted to give you that little background. And I'm going to share just a bit of my background so you can understand my perspective on this particular topic. So one of the big challenges with creating learning and learning content is that to put it into technology-based formats such as online or mobile devices and so on, you used to have to be a fairly technical person. But since with the advent of a lot of rapid development tools, you can just convert PowerPoints. And the problem with that is, actually let's talk about the reason that happened is it made it more scalable, right? Anybody who knows PowerPoint can put something together, get it turned into Flash, put it online, get it out there. So it made the process more scalable. The problem, of course, is that with just putting PowerPoints online can cause what I call a PowerPoint poison effect, and we'll talk about what that is. But essentially, if you don't pay attention to certain instructional design principles, or you just try to turn a presentation into training, it can sometimes not only be ineffective, but can actually backfire on you and hurt your organization. So I'm going to pause and just ask one more time that you raise your hand if you can hear me, because I just got a question about whether or not we've started. So if you can hear me, please raise your hand one more time. Okay, great. So thank you for that. So I'll go ahead and lower the hands now again. Just got to make sure we're all together here. So the challenge with PowerPoint poison is, I think most of us have been in any number of meetings where somebody's up at the front presenting, you're in the darkened room and they're just going on, and you can only take so much of that before you either zone out or fall asleep, or it's just not that effective because it's one-way communication. It's just telling as training, right? And that's one of the common problems with PowerPoint is if you just convert your presentation, you're going to get the situation where you're going to create that environment where this is what you're going to end up with, where the learner thinks of e-learning as this problem, meaning it's boring, I don't want to go to it, every time I go to it I'm just watching this presentation. Now granted, doing that may be better than having nothing, because if you don't have any training available, at least it makes it available. So I'm not going to say it's useless, but what we're trying to do today is talk about easy and fast ways, relatively speaking, to make your training that much more effective while still basing your course on PowerPoint. And you can take advantage of the things I'm going to talk to you about using a variety of tools, not just tools at Rapid Intake. Of course, Rapid Intake has tools that can help you do these things as well. So what is the PowerPoint poison effect? If somebody has that experience where they come to your training and it's extremely boring, it's not very interactive, it's not engaging, then what are they going to think of e-learning, and how are they going to react to the next time you have put out an e-learning course? So what happens in some organizations is the training department says, hey, we put out our first e-learning course and it's just text and images only, or it's got just a PowerPoint, so we'll talk about it in terms of the PowerPoint here. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause one more time because I've got another question coming in that's making me wonder if this is all working correctly, so I apologize for this, but just want to make sure. So let me ask this question. If you can see my screen, which should be showing a PowerPoint slide with like a PowerPoint icon and skull and crossbones on it, can you please raise your hand through the interface there? Okay. Some people aren't seeing it for some reason, but if you happen to, it looks like it is working okay. If you happen to still be seeing the presenter will arrive shortly, you may need to log out and log back in. The other thing that you may want to do is choose to or look at your different windows and see if the one that you don't have up is pulling up correctly. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is go on here with the next slide. So what you don't want to do is create an environment where your PowerPoint is perceived as being, your e-learning is perceived as being ineffective and boring. Because what happens is they'll go back and tell their peers, and it creates an effect of poison being spread throughout the organization. And I've seen this happen before where you just thought you had a big success because you got your e-learning out, and then people get demotivated and they're sort of spreading bad vibes around the organization. So that's what I would call PowerPoint poison. So how do we avoid that? That's really the question we're going to talk about here. So what we're going to do is talk real briefly about some instructional design principles. This is not really an instructional design class or session, but I want to talk a little bit about that so that we can tie in some of what I'm suggesting to relate to instructional design. Now, being able to incorporate the very best instructional design in e-learning is not always possible, either because of time constraints or budget constraints, and which is one of the reasons that we often turn to PowerPoint in the first place, because we need to do it fast and inexpensively. But we should still pay as much attention to them as we can within those constraints. And so those are some of the ideas that I want to get across here. So this man is Dr. M. David Merrill, and he wrote a very good paper. If you want a really solid, easy to follow, practical introduction and foundation to instructional design, I would say look for his First Principles of Instruction paper. It actually combines the research from several different instructional design leaders in the industry into some practical application. So let's take a look at some of the things that Dr. Merrill talks about. And there are lots of different approaches to instructional design, and I'm not going to say this is the end-all, but we're going to use this as sort of our basis for the scenario I'm going to take you through in just a minute. So first of all, activating knowledge. What is activating knowledge? Well, activating somebody from an instructional design standpoint is helping them to recall and stimulate their mind on the area of the subject of the topic that you're trying to teach on, so that they bring to the forefront of their awareness what they already know about the subject, or what they don't know. That's the other thing that can be done effectively, is to help them understand what they don't know, because that will help them ask questions and realize that they may need to learn. So activating knowledge can be done in a variety of ways, but we'll show you some ideas about how you could do that with some samples here in a minute. But some of the ways that people will do it is the most common way, which I think is not terribly effective, is just to list learning objectives. At the end of this course you're going to learn X, Y, and Z. I think those are very important so that you design your course effectively. I don't think they help learners really learn that much and don't help them activate knowledge that well. Sometimes people will give a quiz at the beginning, sometimes a learning game, and sometimes you'll have a scenario, right? Giving somebody a scenario and so on to help them get the essence of the problems that they're trying to solve with the training. So activating knowledge would be step one. Then we demonstrate. This involves explaining, showing examples of how to, how not to, things like that. And a lot of these things seem intuitive, and yet we don't follow them in our own training development sometimes. So after demonstration, the learner needs to apply, right? They need to try to apply what they've learned to a situation where the problem exists, if possible. And people will often try to do this by using quizzes and so on, and that's a good step in the right direction, but there's more that we could do there too, I think. And then finally, integrating. How do you integrate a new skill, a new set of knowledge on the job or in the place and environment where the learner actually needs to do it? That's difficult with e-learning because by nature of e-learning, they're actually doing something different than their actual job. But we can help facilitate that that transition to the actual work environment where they are doing the new task or demonstrating the new knowledge on the job or in the environment where they need to demonstrate and perform that. And so we'll talk about some ways to do that. So again, some of the ways that we can do these I'll show in the demonstration, but in this slide, just one of the ways that you can apply content: interactions, quizzes, simulations. Integrations could be job aids, job assessments, things that maybe tasks that a coach has to do after the training with somebody, so it's kind of the blended learning approach. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to switch over and we're going to look at a converted PowerPoint and some things that we've done to it to be able to make it more effective. So I'm going to start with sort of the lowest common denominator of a PowerPoint here. So here's our sample course. All right, so we've got a PowerPoint. It's been converted to Flash, and it works great, in desktop browsers and so on. And we've got our slide titles here, and you could do this with any number of tools, right? You can convert the PowerPoint, add some narration, and so on. So I would consider this the PowerPoint poison because it's just the PowerPoint presentation with some narration. Again, I'm not knocking its benefits, but in the long run, it could cause some problems. Now, the other thing is this is fairly short. Some of the PowerPoints that you're working with in the real world are going to be really long, and that complicates the problem even further. A short PowerPoint like this may not be so bad if you only have a few slides, but we're just using a short one to help illustrate the kinds of things you can do. So here, just to show you what we start with, we have an acronym. Right? What boring PowerPoint presentation wouldn't be complete without an acronym, or would be complete without an acronym? So we've got each letter representing something and so on, and then the trainer is narrating all this, etc., etc. Down here we have some clip art, and then we have some steps to transform the customer. Then finally we actually get some decent content where we're giving examples of how this can happen. And so this is a step into application, actually. So there's some effort put in there instead of moving on just beyond telling somebody. So starting out, this is being a challenge. So we're going to start with number 2 here. I just have to comment on a question that Dermot just made. He said, I don't want to be rude, but isn't this presentation exactly what you're trying to get beyond? And it's true. It's kind of funny because here I am demonstrating this using PowerPoint. Well, yeah, I'm going to go through some examples here that will hopefully help. And I admit in a webinar it can be more difficult when you've got several hundred people. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the first step. How do we take this PowerPoint and how do we create it, make it more effective? So the first thing that we've done is we've broken up the slides into different topics. This may seem too simple to make a big difference, but making topic headings can really help learners get their heads around what the subject is all about and how it's grouped and organized. And by doing that, you're going to help the learner break down the content into more manageable pieces. So that's a simple thing. Then what else have we done here? We've still got our first slide here with the introduction. And then what we added here is a scenario. So this is a simple scenario. So this is about the whole topic is about customer service. So here we have a customer service scenario where the learner has to try to see how they would respond to this situation. So they would type their response here. I would do such and such. And then when they click View Answer, they're going to see how the course designer would approach it, or they're going to see one example of a best case scenario, a response. So this is a simple thing that you can do to help activate knowledge, right? Because this is the first step, is how do we activate knowledge? And creating a scenario that poses a problem, adults love to solve problems, is one way to help the learner do that. And then having them see the results of that challenge can also help them get their domain activated. We also activate with a word game. So in this case, it happens to be a hangman game where we are trying to introduce them to these principles here. And so we have a little interaction here. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is you might say, well, how do I create that interaction? I'm not a developer. And all of these things that I'm going to show you in the increasingly more effective course can all be done through the use of templates that make it easy to build. You don't have to know any development techniques. And so all you have to do is ask yourself, what kind of template do I want to use for this kind of situation? In this case, we're trying to teach some terminology that means something that we want them to remember. So we're using a word game to get them interested. On that note, using the word game, the actual word game in your table of contents may or may not be approved by your company culture. It really depends. But I've seen evidence that learners will jump to something that has the word game in it because they want to play games. Who doesn't in some ways? So you may want to try that out in using that in your table of contents. That's why we include it here as an example. But you may just want to have it be a game but call it something else. Some organizations will say, oh, we can't play games. This is serious. We don't play games at work. I'm a big believer that games can help you learn and keep people engaged in the learning process. But you'll have to make that decision. Then we have another interaction here at the beginning, helping them learn about the different terms here. And they even get to try to practice it. And notice we're doing all of this before we are actually engaging them in teaching or telling or demonstrating, right? And some people might say, well, why would you do that? Because they don't even know. How would they do all this? Well, they're doing it through interactivity, and it's just a way of getting them involved in the subject before, so that, again, activating their knowledge will help them comprehend and retain better. So those are two examples of interactions that you could include. Three, so we've got our scenario, we have an introduction little game, and then we have a matching activity. Then we get into more of the PowerPoint, right, where we're explaining this and showing them different examples and so on. So we're using the PowerPoint to do a lot of the demonstration step, in a sense. Now, I'll acknowledge that in some topics, demonstrating may require more than a PowerPoint slide. But telling and demonstrating kind of fall into that category. Again, you're not going to be able to follow perfect instructional design every time, but these are just some quick ways that you can incorporate some sound principles to make the course quite a bit better. So I've now opened up scenario or iteration number 3 of the same course. And so we've got, let's see what's changed in this one. We have the introduction. We still have our scenario, our word game. We've got our matching interaction here. And we still have all of our PowerPoint slides that we just saw. But then at the end of the section, we have an interaction to help them review or check their progress. Can they remember now? So what did they understand? In this case, it's a categories game where a description shows up here, and the learner has to try to identify what category this belongs to. And there's some audio effects and things like that that you don't hear on the webinar, but they go through here and try to match up these descriptions with the different categories. So again, how long does it take to build something like this? Well, if you had to build it from scratch, you're talking at least several hours of Flash development, for example. But with tools like Rapid Intake, you can build this kind of stuff very quickly. And you may have other tools that you have access to these sorts of games or interactions. And so again, what we're trying to do here is get away from just telling as training, have the learner come back with additional knowledge demonstration, right? So we're moving out of demonstration and trying to get into the application. I still would call this more of a retention activity, but to get to application properly, you want to make sure they understand and retain. So what else have we done down here beneath, or in this section? How can you do it? We have the additional PowerPoint slides. Then we have the steps listed here on the slide, but we also have an interactive step-by-step. And you may choose to even replace the slide with something like this, but the learner can come in and go through the series of steps. They see them all here. They see an example over here, maybe an image or something supporting that. And then, of course, we have a progress check. Can we put the steps in order to see that we just learned about, right? And so already we've made quite a difference in the effectiveness of the course because we're activating their knowledge here with these activities here. The demonstration, again, is generally the same. It's part of the core content of the PowerPoint. But then we're trying to move towards the application of it as well. I'm going to pause and just check for some questions here. So Debbie asked, in your type the answer question, meaning the scenario, what happens with the learner's answer? Well, it really depends on how you set things up. That can either be sent back to the learning management system, or it can just be there for the learner to have a place to reflect on something. So it just depends on setups. But so another question that just came in is, what application did you use for this scenario? This particular scenario was a interaction built by, let me go back to that one, built by a user in our community. So they, using the SDK, built an extension that plugs into Rapid Intake Unison. And so you can find this one on our marketplace. However, there's a very similar one to this in Unison in what's called the Advanced Interactions category, for any of you who happen to use that tool. All right, I'm going to move on to the next interaction and pick up some more of your questions a little bit later, or the next iteration. So let's see, that was So here's our next one. And this one is very similar. We've got all the same things that we had before. What we've added to this is simply an assessment. So of course adding a quiz or assessment of maybe the whole topic, not just each individual subtopic. And in this case they are dragging and dropping to see if the learner can identify the different parts of what's been taught here. And here we have a true-false, feedback, and so on. In this case, this is a multiple choice with some audio. So play the audio for the question, then listen to each audio response. Now you might want to have audio responses because they could all be the same thing, just said a different way, for example. So those are just some examples of things you can do. Any e-learning tool you use is going to have some good interactions that can be used for testing. Rapid Intake's no exception, and there are 12 different types of interactions that you can use for quizzing and testing, and those are just a few examples there. So adding this, again, we're getting to the application, kind of doing what I would consider the initial stages of application, making sure that they understand, they retain, they can demonstrate they have that knowledge. But we can move farther beyond that as well. So let's go on to the next iteration here. Oops. Okay. So this one is again similar. We're just adding to it, and the way we're doing it is by adding a final review. Now, I still wouldn't consider this application. This is more of a tell them what you told them. You've probably heard that adage, right? The training is tell them what you're going to teach them, and then tell them what you taught them. So that's still good advice, meaning reviewing when you're done with something is good. And a lot of people review content by just saying sort of a repeat of the learning objectives up at the front. Notice that we don't even have learning objectives in this course, and some people would shout heresy at me, but I contend that the learning objectives are really more for the instructional designer than for the learner. I'm not saying they can't be useful, but I think that they can be replaced with other things that are more useful. And the same thing with the bulleted list of, in this session you learned X, Y, and Z. Why not have a quiz or a game or something, some interaction at the end where, again, they're having to demonstrate what they did learn. And if they didn't, that may motivate them to learn more. You may be able to remediate them with some additional knowledge as well. So this is a Jeopardy style learning game, and it goes through a series of questions and so on that they can get points for and all of that. So would you rather look at a bulleted list or go through and play a game where you can, again, reinforce the knowledge by trying to demonstrate that? Now, one thing I want to do is take a time out of showing you some of these iterations to show you how easy it is to build some of these interactions. And the reason I want to do that is because the things that I'm suggesting here are not things that are going to cost tons of money to have to go out and get crack developers to build. They're not things that you have to spend tons of time on. Obviously, you're going to have to come up with the content, but the development part of it is very simple because they're all template driven. And so by combining, what we're trying to do here is combine the rapid development benefits of PowerPoint with the rapid development benefits of template-driven interactions to come up with a more scalable, more effective kind of model for creating e-learning content that's more effective than just the PowerPoint. And so I want to just show you some of that so you get an idea of this is not something that's going to take tons of expertise to be able to do. So what I'm going to do is pull up rapid intake software and kind of show you the process for this. Now you can find some other similar types of solutions in other tools, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the virtues of our tools over other tools. My main effort here is to show you just how simple this can be. The one thing I'll say about this is Rapid Intake is a web-based collaborative environment, so what you're seeing is a web-based application. Other tools may be desktop-based. Rapid Intake allows you to collaborate using multiple people in the same project and centralized media assets and things like that. So you may see those differences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the process of just showing how you would create some of these interactions, and I'm not going to go through and create them right off the bat, but I'll show you the process for it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to take you through the process of creating a new project. And we will choose a course style here. Let's choose in this tool you have to assign people, and there are different levels of users, and so I'm just going to make sure myself is assigned, and we could assign other people if we want them to work on the project as well. And it'll take a minute for it to build this project out, and then I'll show you how building out these kinds of interactions, how simple it can be. So while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to pull up the question panel again. So one of the questions is, would love some names of free tools to use for game creation if you can suggest some. So free games, I know you can usually get a free trial of most tools and get free games that way. I don't know myself a lot of free tools, but we did just do a webinar maybe 2 or 3 months ago, maybe just last month, on a bunch of free tools that you can use for creating things for e-learning. And I wasn't the one that did that, someone else in our company did. So you may want to look up that webinar. So there's a recording of that. So Debbie's asking, are the styles from which you're selecting built into Rapid Intake? Yes, they are. The ones I'm going to show you are. You can also build your own. You can completely skin the course styles. You can modify. Rapid Intake comes with all the source files, so you can do that. So yeah. Beth is asking, are the PowerPoint files with interactions 508 compliant? In some ways they are, in other ways they aren't. So it depends on how much compliance you need to do. If fully compliant, I would say no. They're converted Flash movies, and the interactions may or may not be readable by screen readers. It depends. But some of our customers, for example, have taken the source files and made it fit the way that the amount of Section 508 compliance they need. Luis is asking, can Rapid Intake import keynote presentations? no, those would need to first be converted to PowerPoint before they get imported. So, all right, and Christine, you're saying that the slide changing is lagging quite a bit, so I'll try to slow down a bit. All right, I'm going to come back to the questions a little bit later. So we've created our project. Now we just need to go in and work on it. So we're going to open up the authoring environment itself, and you add topics and pages over here. Now the first thing we do is we'd come in here and import our PowerPoint, okay? And I'm not going to do that because we've already shown you some of that, but suffice to say it will keep all the animations and narration and things like that. What I want to show is more of the interactivity. So if I click on Add a Page, you can go into a variety of categories such as the learning games and add content. So if we were going to add the type of content that I was showing you, the Jeopardy style game, we just choose that, click Add Selected Page, and then we can go in and complete the content. So all the development's done. You're just focusing on filling out the specific content. So you can see we get a step-by-step form here, and a lot of it's already filled out for you. You can leave the default instructions and so on, but you're going to put in the categories, the amounts, the game questions, and so on. So you can see you just have to learn how to fill out the form. There's textual help for each field and so on. So somebody was asking earlier, how do you build the scenario? You can go into the advanced interactions area, and it's called the case study. And so again, it's just a matter of adding these kinds of things at the appropriate points, and it takes some creativity to think about, well, which kinds of interactions would work well in these situations. But the benefit is that the course is going to be that much more effective, and it doesn't take that much longer to do it. And so you're still getting a rapidly developed course, but you are you're not having to spend a lot more time. And so this is just the form related to this particular interaction. So again, there are all kinds of different interactions that you can include, and another one that I'm going to show you in just a minute is called the soft skill branching scenario simulation. And that's another thing that we've added to the PowerPoint sample that we've done for this presentation, is to help get us to the apply. So I'll show you that as well. You've seen the terms and definitions, the step-by-step. And there's a lot of things that you can do with this that I'm not going to go into. So again, I'm not it's not a demonstration of the whole tool or anything. You can find out about that by attending one of our sales webinars or contacting one of our salespeople. But the point is that with our tool or with a lot of other tools, you're going to want to check with the tools that you may have access to. Do they have interactions? Do they fit the right types of things that I'm trying to do? And how easy are they to use and build, edit, and maintain, and so on? But the main emphasis I want to make here is try to take advantage of the tools you have, or get tools that, if you don't have them, to help add benefit, instructional benefit, by using pre-built interactions while following an instructional model, right? Don't just add them willy-nilly. Do it with intent. Think about, how do I activate? How do I demonstrate? How do I apply? How do I integrate? So that's all I'm going to do to show you our specific tool, but that gives you an idea of the process and how easy it is to add those kinds of interactions. So let's go back to our iterative PowerPoint conversion. We've got a couple more levels that we've added, a couple of additional iterations. So here's the next one. And what have we added to this? Well, this is where we really get an application. We've added a scenario. And the scenario poses a problem to the learner, and that could be supported by an image or video over here. with additional media down here, the learner has to decide how they're going to respond, and based on how they respond, the interaction, the scenario is going to take them to a different path. So basically the customer is complaining, and these images, by the way, we did this in front of a live trade show audience, so the images are actually of some people there that wanted to participate, so that the photos aren't that great, but you get the idea. And if we take one of these paths, let's take this first path for example, you can see that our progress meter is telling us it's not we're not progressing too well. He gets upset. Let's say we get even more upset, and we've hit the final or one of the ending points, the worst case scenario, by taking that path. So the learner, if they've followed this path in good faith, they may think, how did I get to this point? There's an argument in instructional design that you should just let learners figure things out on their own. There's some validity to that. That's one of the benefits that this kind of interaction has. There's also an argument that says, hey, the people who know what they're talking about should let the people who don't know what they're talking about know the knowledge and teach the knowledge, so more prescriptive. And so this template kind of combines both worlds, where the learner is exploring how to apply these principles on their own, and they can learn from that, but then we also have the option of showing feedback so that the learner can evaluate what they've done and actually get some direction from the scenario designer. And in my opinion, this is the combination of the best of both worlds, where the learner's learning by exploring and from their own experience, but they're also learning from the wisdom of somebody who's been through a similar situation before. So they could start over and try again. And again, how long did this take to build, right? We did this in front of a live trade show audience. It took less than 40 minutes to put it all together. And we did have, of course, the text written ahead of time, and that, granted, will take longer to do. You have to come up with a scenario and all of that. But in my opinion, it's worth it, because if you don't have something like this, what you've done is you have training without any application. They're just learning, and there's value to it, but the value is exponentially greater if they can try to apply. And what we're trying to get to here is giving them some case studies, essentially, in their mind before they get out and actually perform the skills in the real world. So there are a variety of ways that people have tried to teach soft skills, and in this case it's not a hard and fast quantitative scientific skill that we're talking about. It requires a lot of critical thinking and judgment to help a complaining customer turning into a happy customer. And so how do you teach that in e-learning? Well, the scenarios, as you've seen, is one of the ways that you can approach that. So we've had the scenario at the beginning, we have this more complex branching scenario at the end. And so that's one way that can be used in a template environment. Now, another one that I've seen that has worked really well for soft skills is what's called video ethnography. And video ethnography, one of our users has actually built a template for this. They're two professors that have pioneered this kind of an approach and done a lot of research and had a lot of experience with it. And they took our tools and SDK and built a plugin, a template for it, so you can build these things. I don't have a real good example to show you because they haven't come up with any examples that they can let me show because of the proprietary content they have, but just in brief, I'll explain that what they have is they actually take a video footage of a successful phenomenon happening. So this might be a really good teacher, a really good doctor or surgeon, somebody who's doing something really well, and then using that as the basis for instruction. Now, that's nothing new if you just say, oh, we shoot video all the time. Well, what they're doing is they include multiple perspectives on the video. So if it's a teacher, you watch the video, and then they watch the video again with the teacher actually commenting on what they're doing as they're trying to control an unruly classroom or something like that. Then they might have a student interviewed that was in that situation. Then they might have the school principal. Then they might have another teacher comment on what they see. And what happens is that the learner actually gets to see different perspectives on the same thing. And it's a really fascinating and effective way for learners to develop new ways of thinking and understanding soft skills. So I just mentioned that since we're kind of talking about soft skills there. That obviously would take a little bit more time, but in this case we've got some scenarios. We're populating these templates, and again, you could build all this out from scratch, perfectly beautiful. Maybe the template doesn't work exactly the way you want. Well, you could make it work exactly the way you want from scratch. But you have to ask yourself the trade-off. Is it worth the time? Is it worth the cost? I have another session that where I talk about instructional patterns. And what I see as instructional patterns, the way I define them are scalable, repeatable ways of solving the same instructional problem with a certain type of interactive activity. And so it may not be the perfect example, but or the perfect interaction, but it's good enough. And that's sort of what you have to do when you're dealing with rapid e-learning development, is what is good enough versus perfect, or what is ideal, and what is effective, more effective, and most effective. You may not have the resources to do what's most effective. Let's just take an example of a simulation. Let's say you're teaching software. Well, the most effective thing in terms of a simulation would be to create a full-blown reproduction of the software and have them be able to fail in as many ways as possible, right? Because the best simulations allow you to fail without actually having the consequences of failure in the same way, so that you can learn from those mistakes. Well, recreating an entire software application is enormously expensive. So tools like Captivate have allowed for a certain type of acceptable, minimum acceptable interaction to surface, where everybody says, well, we're going to do a simulation, but it's not going to be a full-blown simulation, because we're going to do it on what I call a lockstep, and it's repeatable, it's scalable. So there are trade-offs that you make, and this is one of the points I want to get across, is that you're not going to end up with the perfect course at the end of something like this. But what you're going to end up with is exponentially more effective than just the PowerPoint. And it doesn't take that much more time to do, relatively speaking, because you're not designing it from scratch. You're not trying to go for the ideal. You're using templates, but you're still building something that's effective and much more effective. So you can see the power of this kind of scenario in a soft skills environment. Let's take a look at the last iteration. So I would say that what we've tried to do here with the PowerPoint is we've tried to activate, demonstrate through the use of the PowerPoint, tried to add interactions to review and assess and help them retain information. We've added final review. We've added the scenario. Then how do we get into integration? Well, probably the easiest, quickest way is to include something like a job aid, where the learner has to perform some task in the real world, or a job aid that helps them perform that task. It's not going to solve the problem of integration for you. That's a problem that can't always be solved in e-learning. In fact, rarely in my experience can it be solved in e-learning, but it can help kind of start the bridge to integration in the real world environment. So what we have here is we have a okay, maybe this link isn't working. I don't know why it pulled up that, but this should be launching a PDF document that is a job aid that goes along with the course. So so again, I want to, in summary, emphasize that what we're doing here is trying to use an instructional methodology, and you can choose whatever methodology you want, and pre-built interactions that can be made to relate to that methodology to improve the instructional effectiveness. So if you look at how much more effective this course is from what we started with, it's quite significant. Of course, we still have some of our PowerPoint slides, if not all of them, as part of the content. But interspersed are activities put there for a specific instructional purpose that make for a much more engaging and effective learning experience than we had before. And you can do it all without programming. So let's go back to my presentation so we can kind of wrap this up, and I'll answer any remaining questions. So in summary, a recorded PowerPoint can be a part of good instruction, but alone it could be even detrimental to what you're trying to accomplish as an overall initiative. And that's where I would call the PowerPoint poison. So regardless of what the tools are that you use, and of course I'm going to be biased to our tools, but there are many good tools out there. I do want to show you one more thing before we finish that could help you as well, that I wasn't planning on showing, but it just comes to mind. I think it may be helpful. But we want to move beyond training. Telling is training, meaning just one-way delivery, by using a quiz and other interactions as knowledge checks, creating tests that correlate with learning objectives, and adding interactions, games, and simulations to help apply. Now again, these learning objectives may not necessarily be stated to the learner, but they can be effective for the instructional designer. So you can do all of this without having to spend a bucket load on development and time. What I wanted to show you was another tool and this is a tool that you can get on our website. It is a web-based tool. It's separate from our main authoring tool, so you can actually use it with any authoring tool that you use. It can be used with our authoring tool as well. In fact, it's included with our authoring tool. But you can come out here and create all kinds of interactions and games, and this creates a standalone Flash movie that can be loaded into pretty much any tool or PowerPoint or however you want to use it. So I just wanted to mention that in case this uses the same kinds of principles, meaning you just choose the type of interaction you want to build. Let's say this one here. And then you choose the content. So let's say it gives you a preview up here. And you're going to put in your content down here. So we've got our body text, audio, so on. We can go into each area, put in the title and all of that, and then get a preview. And I'm not going to go through the process, but you can see the type of interaction it creates. And you can download that and move it to your course. So that's another available tool to you called Rapid SwiftMaker on our website. So I'm going to move to, well, let me just briefly mention, again, the tools that I've been showing you here are part of Rapid Intake Unison, which is a collaborative authoring environment for rapid e-learning development and mobile learning. So there were some questions I think I saw in the question and answer panel about how much of this converts to mobile. Some of our interactions will convert. We're working on getting all of them to convert to mobile. It's still a work in progress right now. But there's a lot that you can still do on mobile already. As far as interactivity, it's just going to be, we're going to continue to add to that. So I want to take some of your other questions here in the remaining time. So one of the comments made by Andrew is, surely the first thing is to design the PowerPoint well, then add learning interactions. That's what I try to do. Writing good interactions takes time. And that's a really good point. I purposefully used a really bad PowerPoint just to sort of emphasize the point about, even if you have a super bad PowerPoint, you can make the course pretty good by adding these kinds of interactions. But definitely designing the PowerPoint can make a big difference. And you could have a separate discussion on that alone. Kimberly's asking, is everything branded with Rapid Intake, or can we brand it with our own company? You have full control over the branding, complete control. There's no limit. And if you want to contact us separately, we can show you where you can put in your branding and how to do that. The learners never see the Rapid Intake on there. For better or worse, it probably would benefit us if it said powered by Rapid Intake somewhere. But we feel like if you buy our software, you're paying for our software, you should, we shouldn't be using it to advertise. Shouldn't be using you to advertise for us. So Beth is asking, are these viewable on iPads and iPhone? Again, Rapid Intake actually has a lot of publishing options for iPad, iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, but not all interactions work on those yet. So what's currently supported, just in brief, and if you want more information on this, you'll need to take a look at our eLearning Studio tool. But what's currently supported is the quizzes, text, image, audio, video, interactive glossary, terms and definitions page, so those are the main things that are currently supported. There's a way to convert PowerPoints too. It's kind of a challenge right now, but you can see on our blog a way to convert PowerPoints. But eventually, all of these things will be convertible to mobile devices. It's just work in progress. So let's see. Judy asks, excuse me, can the text for the e-learning be external so that it's easily translated? How would you approach needing multiple versions by language? So great question. Any content you actually build with Rapid Intake is all the text is externalized. Now that's building not with PowerPoint. So when you build with PowerPoint and Rapid Intake, it converts that PowerPoint into a flat Flash movie. So that becomes a little bit more challenging. But if you actually use the visual layout editor inside Unison or the interactions and all of that, that's all text stored in an external XML file that can be translated into other languages. The approach to translating those, usually people will send those XML files off to a translation company, or they'll have somebody who knows the language create a copy of the course and go in and just change it out right in the course. And Rapid Intake does support multi-byte characters and things like that. So Kathleen says, is the SwiftMaker free or for service? Well, it's for a fee, but it's included with our product at the ultra premium level. So, I guess it might seem free if you already have our tools, but no, it's not a free tool. But you can go out and play with it. Anything you download has a watermark on it until you pay for it. But you can also purchase it separately if you need to use it with other tools. And so you can just contact our sales department if you're interested in that. So Will asks, I agree that PowerPoint alone is boring, but what do you mean by saying it's poisoning? Well, the effect of a boring PowerPoint is that the person taking it goes around and spreads the bad news that they had such a boring experience, and that they spread kind of these bad vibes throughout your organization. So that's the poison there. Debbie asks, what tool is best for individual development as opposed to collaborative? Well, our tools are great for collaborative development. We do sell tools for individual development as well, which is called Proform. So you can look at that. Our web-based tools have some more advanced features that the Proform tool doesn't have yet, but that would be one to look at. There are lots of other tools on the market as well. So you just would want to go out and look for e-learning authoring tools or rapid e-learning tools and things like that. So Leonardo asks, will it be possible to integrate HTML5 interactions the way we do now with Flash-based? Yes, so we are working on, as far as rapid intake goes, we're working on being able to add custom HTML5 interactions. So that's in the works. James wants my thoughts on HTML5, and I would love to share them. Let me come back to that question after I answer a few more. Brendan says, do you have a product that converts PowerPoint to HTML5? No, we don't. Not at this point. And Kimberly says, if we're interested in reviewing some of these options to purchase, who should we speak to? Please feel free to send me an email, and I'll connect you to the right person. We have a sales department, so you can either send me an email or you can just send a general email to sales@rapidintake.com. But here's my email address on the screen here. I'll share that. If you have any questions about anything we do or this presentation or my opinion on anything, I'm happy to interact with you as well. So Heather asked, does a free sandbox version of Rapid SwiftMaker provide all possible versions of the interactions? Yes, it does. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go back to the question about HTML5. I'm going to say that this is a official ending to our presentation, just because I know a lot of you probably have to go. But I'll stay on for a few more minutes, answer any questions and so on. But I want to thank you all for participating today, and I hope it was helpful. I don't mean to say that this is the end-all of all presentations related to PowerPoint e-learning, but I hope that you had some ideas about how you can quickly and fairly easily improve the effectiveness of even courses that may have a bad starting point. So, and do it fairly cost effectively as well. So thanks for joining. I'm going to stay on again and answer a few more questions. Feel free to leave or stay as you like. Thanks for all the positive comments as well. I appreciate those. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. I'm going to talk about the HTML5 question because I'm pretty passionate about this topic. I think HTML5 is a fabulous combination of technologies. HTML5, when most people talk about that, they're really talking about HTML, JavaScript, and CSS and just the later versions of it. It's gotten a big name now because of the 5, right, HTML5, but really you could do a lot of similar things in previous versions. There was a lot of interactivity you could do 10 years ago. It's just that it's now increased. But I think it's wonderful for mobile devices because it's cross-platform compatible. However, I want to share my very strong feelings about the unreasonable and irrational, there's a new word for you, irrational aversion to Flash some people are getting largely because of what Steve Jobs started doing about 1.5 years ago. Some people are saying now that Adobe has decided not to support Flash on mobile devices that Flash is dead and so on. Well, there's a big distinction, and I've written a couple of blog articles about this, but there's a big distinction between Flash on mobile and Flash on desktop browsers, a huge difference. And Flash on desktop browsers has been adopted by 98% of the people in the world. There are literally billions of people that use Flash in desktop browsers. That's not the case on mobile devices. It never got fully adopted, never got fully supported. It was best supported in Android. There's a huge ecosystem built around Flash on desktop. It's much more stable. It solves a lot of problems that HTML5 still doesn't know how to solve. One is, how does it work the same in all the different browsers? If I were to poll everybody in this audience, there'd be a number of you who still use Internet Explorer 6. Well, HTML5 is not going to work until Internet Explorer 9. How long is it going to take for organizations to all be on an HTML5 browser? So the reality is that Flash solves the problem still, as it did 10 years ago for us of cross-browser compatibility. The power behind Flash, being able to build very complex simulations and interactions and things like that, it's just not as capable. HTML5 isn't as capable yet. And then the other big problem with HTML5 that's still there is security. You put a video out in HTML5 on a desktop, and you can just right-click it and download the video. Well, is that what you want people to be doing with your videos? In Flash, it's much more difficult to do. You have to screen capture it or something. On mobile devices, HTML5 is more secure because you don't have the same features of just saying, I want to download this. Not to say it's fully secure, but it's much more difficult for people to take that content. So security and cross-browser compatibility are some of the biggest reasons to still support Flash on the desktop, and Adobe's still going to support Flash on the desktop. So I honestly don't know where the big brouhaha comes about being Flash is dead. Is HTML5 going to take more market share? Sure. Is Flash going to be dead? No. Will it eventually go away? I don't know. It depends on Adobe's decisions and how they choose to do things, and whether or not the open source community picks it up at some point if Adobe does decide to put it out there. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but right in the here and now, Flash is a much, much better way to deliver courses than HTML for desktop browsers. So that's my own assessment there. So we'll have to see how things go. Things change all the time, but right now, comparing HTML5 to Flash, in my opinion, is like comparing a bicycle to a Harley. They can both move, they can both go down the street, but you really want to use that for your training. Not to say you can't do a lot of great things in HTML5, but it's not the same comparison in terms of robustness. So, for what it's worth, since you asked, I'm very passionate about that because I feel like a lot of people, I feel like there's a lynch mob essentially just out there trying to take down Flash. Let's just go out and destroy Flash, and there's not a lot of rational thought behind it, in my opinion. So all the developers that I know that really know what they're talking about, have been in development a long time, they're not just jumping over to HTML5. Certainly it's a technology we need to pay attention to and support, which we are at Rapid Intake. So there you go. All right, well, you're welcome for the comments. I'd love to see you at any conferences. If you ever want to come by and talk more about stuff like that, feel free. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up officially the rest of this. And I'm sorry, I just have to say, Angel Chavez just said, I don't know if you pronounced your name, Angel Angel, but said, meaning that the bicycle is better than the motorcycle. Well, it's true. It's true. It could be, right? If you don't want a motorcycle and you want a bicycle, that's fine. But if you need a motorcycle, right, get the motorcycle. Eventually, the bicycle will get you where you want to go. But anyway, I hope you have a great holiday season, everybody. Thanks for joining, and this will officially conclude the webinar. Bye-bye.
Welcome to GoToWebinar.